Have you ever had the feeling that your life is running on autopilot? You wake up, commute, work, scroll, sleep. The days blend together. You're busy, you're productive, but are you truly present? It can feel like you're a passenger in your own body, watching the scenery of your life go by without ever touching the steering wheel. This isn't just burnout. It is the great default state of modern life, a condition where we are physically awake, but our minds are following a pre-programmed script. We live out routines and habits we didn't consciously choose, feeling a quiet sense of stagnation, a feeling that we are not truly living our own life. What if the single greatest gap between the life you have and the life you desire isn't about working harder, but about waking up? This is the oldest philosophical quest in history. Inscribed at the entrance to the Temple of Apollo at Delphi, two words have guided humanity for millennia. Know thyself. The great philosopher Socrates built his life on this principle, teaching that the unexamined autopilot life is simply not worth living. Today, we embark on that journey of examination. We will explore why our minds default to this autopilot mode and learn 3 profound practices drawn from both ancient philosophy and modern psychology to finally take the controls and awaken to the life that is waiting for you. Part 1. The default state. Life on autopilot. Why do we fall into this waking sleep? The answer lies in the architecture of our brains. Nobel Prize-winning psychologist Daniel Kahneman, in his work on human cognition, describes our minds as having 2 systems. System 1 is the autopilot. It's fast, intuitive, emotional, and runs on habit. It's what allows you to drive a familiar road without thinking about it. System 2 is the pilot. It's your rational, deliberate, and conscious mind. It's slow, requires effort, and consumes a lot of energy. Because conscious thought is so demanding, our brain, in an effort to be efficient, defaults to the autopilot whenever possible. We follow the pre-programmed scripts, go to school, get the job, get married, scroll through social media, watch the next recommended video. There's nothing inherently wrong with this, but a life lived entirely on autopilot is a life of reaction, not intention. It is a life that is lived for us, not by us. Consider a man named Alex. Alex followed the script perfectly. He got a practical degree in business, landed a stable corporate job, and spends his evenings decompressing with video games and scrolling through his phone. He isn't unhappy precisely, but he feels a deep, quiet sense of stagnation. His days are a blur of familiar routines. His goals are vague. His dreams feel distant and childish. He's not in pain, but he's not truly alive. He's stuck in the comfortable, predictable loop of his own autopilot, and he doesn't even realize he has the power to take the controls. He is awake, but asleep. Part 2. The Awakening. 3 practices of cognitive alchemy. Cognitive awakening is not a mystical event that happens to you. It is a deliberate practice. It is the decision to actively engage the pilot, your conscious, rational mind, and to transform the raw data of your life into wisdom. Here are 3 fundamental practices to begin this journey. First, the art of active inquiry. We live in an age of passive consumption. We scroll, we listen, we watch, but we rarely stop to think. The Socratic method is the antidote. Socrates didn't lecture. He asked powerful questions that forced people to examine their own assumptions. We must learn to do this for ourselves. The next time you are reading a book or watching a video and an idea strikes you as interesting or difficult, don't just highlight it. Pause. This is what the source material calls a meltdown point. Engage it like a detective. Ask yourself, what is the core principle here? In my own words, do I truly believe this? Why or why not? If this idea is true, what is one small thing I would have to change about my day tomorrow? This practice transforms you from a passive container of information into an active creator of understanding. Second, the ladder of learning. The ancient Greek philosopher Aristotle taught that true knowledge is not just theoretical, episteme, but practical and embodied, ethos. He famously said, "We are what we repeatedly do." Excellence, then, is not an act, but a habit. This directly maps onto what modern research calls the learning pyramid. Passively listening to a lecture gives you about a 5% retention rate. Reading gives you 10%. But active learning, discussing the idea, practicing it, and most powerfully, teaching it to someone else, leads to 75 to 90% retention. Why? Because when you are forced to explain a concept to someone else, you must distill it to its essence. You must own it. If you want to master financial literacy, don't just watch videos. Create a budget, practice, discuss your strategy with a friend discussion, and then explain the basics of compounding interest to your younger sibling, teaching. By moving up the ladder of learning, you don't just know something, it becomes a part of who you are. Third, the principle of the stretch zone. Growth happens at the edge of your abilities. If a task is too easy, you become bored and complacent. This is the comfort zone. If a task is too difficult, you become anxious and overwhelmed, and you quit. This is the panic zone. The psychologist Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi identified the narrow, magical channel between these two, the stretch zone, where the state of flow occurs. It is the sweet spot where a challenge is just slightly beyond your current abilities, requiring your full concentration, but still feeling achievable. This idea resonates with Taoist philosophy and the balance of yin and yang. The comfort zone is too yin, passive and stagnant. The panic zone is too yang, chaotic and stressful. The stretch zone is the perfect dynamic harmony of the two. If you're learning guitar, don't just play the one song you know, boredom. Don't try to play a shredding solo, anxiety. Learn a new, slightly more complex chord progression. That is where you stretch, where you grow, where you enter the flow. The unfolding of a life cognitive awakening is the moment you realize the life script you've been following was written by someone else. It is the decision to stop being a passive tool man, an actor in a play you didn't choose, and to become the author of your own experience. It isn't a single event, but a continuous commitment to these practices. The Socratic practice of asking deeper questions, the Aristotelian practice of embodying what you learn, and the Taoist practice of finding the perfect edge between comfort and chaos. This is the journey from a life on autopilot to a life of intention. The goal is not to become a perfect, optimized machine. It is simply to become more awake, more engaged, and more truly alive. As the existentialist philosopher Jean-Paul Sartre declared, man is nothing else but what he makes of himself. The awakening is the moment you finally pick up the tools and begin.